It's starting.
Oh, it's still
Hi.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
Hey, what up, bitches?
Hello, all viewers. Hopefully, you get a notification for this. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure how
The
many.
millions of viewers. Yeah.
Yeah, for the millions out there watching right now. Yeah, so we're just now streaming on this channel, and I was getting a blast out of the conversation that we were having earlier.
Well, I think we concluded.
Well, everybody, welcome to the 701 Club. We are better.
So we have Animancer here. Say hello, Animancer.
Hey, what the fuck's up, everyone?
Yes.
Hope everyone's doing good.
Yeah, Animancer has helped us out a lot more than he knows, probably. And we got Rachel in the chat. Hello, Rachel. How are you?
Hello there, Rachel.
Welcome to the chat. Yes, we were just discussing about Chris's opinion that he's wrong about everything.
Or more accurately, that nobody can make correct or accurate claims about anything.
Now, we use the strong qualifier there, but in accordance with modal logic, we can also say that because the strong qualifier applies. For example, if I say objectively X, then it also follows that subjectively X. Because you think everybody is wrong, you think you are wrong.
Yeah, I have no idea what's actually happening right now other than what my senses are telling me, and I have not yet received any evidence to suggest through physics that that is the accurate way of seeing things. So I don't know what's happening.
But you're supposing that there is something which is accuracy, which exists in reality in some metaphysical form.
I believe that it's a human construct, certainly, and that it has applicability within human tasks.
What does our guest think of?
Yeah, what are your thoughts about everything?
Great argument.
Dude, I'm just kind of sitting back and absorbing all this because I just woke up like an hour ago and I was not expecting to get into this much of a conversation. So since I'm ignorant on the subject, I think I'll just listen in and like devise my own opinion as things go on.
Sure.
How wrong do you think Chris is?
Even though I don't know a thing about the subject, I think he's incredibly wrong about the entire thing. Clearly, no, I'm just kidding. He could be right. He could be.
You could be right, but you're inaccurate.
Oh yeah, it's true.
You can have a subjectively correct opinion within the subjective context that I can subjectively agree with. I don't like to have to express it that way, but in this conversation, it seems we have to.
But if I were a Christian, for example, then there would be a series of electrochemical reactions happening inside of my brain, which would identify me as a Christian. Those specific thought patterns would be identifiable within reality. So objectively, yes, if I were a Christian, objectively, my being a Christian would be an actual state of physical matter. So yeah, it actually exists, even though it's subjective.
Again,
objectively exists.
Once again, we don't know if physical matter exists or not.
See, there are some assumptions.
I'm not going to make those assumptions.
You already do.
I try not to.
We all do, and that's not a bad thing.
To slow down for you, I think I make the third assumption of the three basic assumptions, and it's modified in a way that can remove the first two with no questions or problems for science whatsoever. Because, remember the first assumption, there are things that could, that exist.
Yeah.
That's a big assumption. We don't know that, honestly. Number two, we can study those things. I don't know that either. But number three, we can make systems that accurately do stuff within those contexts to create more systems that have reproducible ends. That's it.
By
virtue
of having a three, it already presupposes the other two.
I don't think so. I don't think that we know that these things exist. I think that there are subjective systems. My first assumption is there are subjective systems. The second assumption is that we could learn some things about them subjectively. And finally, those subjective systems can be used to create more subjective means by which we create more diverse and thus subjective knowledge.
So you're
all of it is approximated. None of it is affirmed.
So you're saying if Lawrence were to have a stroke and die right
We're
now,
also not talking about
and the
certainty.
two of us were to go to a coroner's
We're not
office,
talking about
Yeah,
certainty.
sorry, we're not talking about absolute certainty.
Oh,
and the two
okay,
of
I
us,
was.
you and I, Chris, were to go to a coroner's office or whatever while an autopsy is being performed. And the doctor there would then show us, yes, Lawrence died of a stroke.
Mhm.
Here's the part of his brain that fucking blew up.
Right.
You can see it right
When
there.
we're-
You would say,
when
that's subjective bullshit.
No.
I don't believe you.
No, yeah, it is subjective, and I believe him.
But Lawrence's stroke never happened, according to you.
I don't know what happened, ever.
So
That's not a matter of whether Lawrence had a stroke
so
or
if you
not.
see Lawrence's body there with his head cut open, and his
Subjectively,
brain
he had
open
a
there,
stroke, and I saw it, yeah.
you then will not come to the logical conclusion that tomorrow Lawrence isn't going to show up.
No, I can conclude that. Subjectively,
But you
tomorrow.
also could be wrong.
Tomorrow is subjective, too.
But
And I could be
you
wrong.
could be wrong.
You believe that you could be wrong about that.
Everything, yes. I have levels of certainty, certainly, but I'm quite confident that you can't have an actual level of certainty.
But that's ridiculous.
A full.
If Lawrence is dead, he's not going to walk through the door tomorrow.
I'd be very surprised, I'll say that.
I would probably try to immediately remove his head from his
Yeah,
shoulders.
right.
Be like, holy shit, zombie.
Well, I mean, unless he tried to explain it. I'm Lawrence 3 from Alternate Universe 2. I've
But-
come here to replace Lawrence because we just hop from universe to
That's-
universe when
that-
one dies.
That's
That's
what
not
we do with your
Lawrence.
clones.
Yeah, right.
That's not Lawrence. That's a separate metaphysical entity.
We don't know that.
By virtue of
From another universe.
Okay, well,
Yes.
Lawrence, fine, but we don't know. He may think that, but that's again subjective. We don't know that.
Well, it's objective that he thinks that.
That's his subjective opinion. No one, I don't think there are ways to formulate objective opinions. Sorry.
No, it's not that the opinion itself is objective. It's that the fact of the matter is that he holds that opinion, which means that it's objectively true that he holds that opinion.
Well, there were also all the other contexts in which he didn't, and those are all equally in
But
the
those
realm of
aren't
existence.
actualized.
We don't know that.
As far as we can tell,
We
those
don't-
aren't actual.
we don't know that.
Positing the existence of multiple universes, which you
No.
already admit that you can't know about.
We don't know. We don't know. We do know that things are significantly
Well,
more
I'm just going to
complex than
apply
we're giving them.
Occam's razor and say that your bullshit claim that there are all these different universes
I
and
didn't make
alternate
that.
Lawrence who can come
This
in
was a joke.
is complete
I
bullshit.
took it from Rick and Morty. It's a joke.
Well, Rick and Morty is wrong
Yeah.
about everything. Multiverse theory is wrong.
I don't know what if
Only one state of affairs is actualized.
we don't know what is actualized. We don't know.
You have no
It's not a
evidence
knowledge
at
thing.
all to suggest that anything else has been actualized.
I don't know if I've experienced more than one probabilistic outcome in a simultaneous.
I mean,
if
you're
I- like, if
doing
I
no
went
better
through-
than just saying, well, we don't know that God exists. So
Well, that's true.
we might as well believe in him or not believe in him, but that's just the standard by which we do it.
Subjectively speaking, within the context that I have no reason to believe that there are any deities.
Well, you also have no
Subjectively.
reason to believe in multiple universes either.
I have evidence subjectively to believe that there are multiple universes.
That is not evidence.
It's all subjective.
No, it's not evidence. It's just some bullshit that some scientist cultist made up to
Or
support his physics cult. Nothing in modern physics is true. Everything about quantum physics is wrong.
Except for all the, what I'm looking for, predictive capability.
Predicted capability is meaningless.
see, now you two are going to argue. Go ahead.
Predictive capability is the way we test hypotheses.
Yeah, that's the way we test hypotheses. That doesn't mean it's an accurate or good way.
No, the thing is, if the predictive capability of something, if we have a model that can predict things before we actually make these discoveries, that makes it more. It makes it closer to the truth. I'm not saying that it's 100% complete. I don't think it ever will be 100% complete, but I think we can build models that work.
Alternatively, your model, which
There's an
you've
approximation.
created- I'm not saying that. Your
I am.
model, which you've created, is something that you look out for, and that contributes to positive bias. So that when you see a phenomena in reality that vaguely resembles the phenomena that's detailed within your theoretical model,
No. It's not a vague thing. There are specific, very accurate predictions that scientists can make using quantum field theory. And they did the same thing with fucking with evolution, too. We knew exactly where a certain, not a species, but because Darwin thought that there
I
would be
agree with the
something.
third assumption.
Because
You have
Darwin.
predictive capabilities.
Darwin, hello, Landon.
Hi, Landon. Do you
We're-
believe that you have predictive capabilities, Landon?
Do you
Because
believe-
I don't believe anyone has predictive capabilities.
Do you believe anything could be objectively understood?
Oh my God,
I don't
let's
think
just
anything
get-
can
let's
be
just get
objectively
Landon in
understood.
here.
Yeah, let's get Landon in here.
Yeah, I'm gonna send you a link over Twitter, Landon. All right.
Yeah, you'll get a lot more out of Landon than you will out of me, guys. Definitely. He's got big brains.
Well, if you'd like to like throw down some hip hop or something
Or-
in the meantime.
Yeah, or if you want to tell us where your name comes from, Animancer, is that like
It's
Um,
like a creator who's a wizard.
No, it's derived from the word anima, and then Mancer is like cryomancer. It's like a wizard, so that type of shit.
well, I play
Yeah.
D&D a lot, so don't worry, I'm there.
Why would you name yourself after an enema?
Anima.
I know. I mean,
Oh,
From his anima.
hell yeah!
Again,
Well, maybe the Animamancer can explain to you
Yeah.
what anima is.
what is anima again? I always forget. I get it mixed up with all the other names.
I'm pretty sure it's Latin for
Life?
soul.
Soul.
No, for soul, I believe. Yeah.
I had heard it used interchangeably with life, so I was not sure.
Yeah, I've also heard it used for that. I think it can mean multiple things. So
Yeah, there's the Jungian sense with the anima-animus dichotomy.
yeah.
Well, maybe I'll cover that in a future video. Jung's really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gave Chris here the red book for a while, and he got a few pages in.
I really didn't enjoy having to slow down reading every few phrases to make sure I actually got what it was he was trying to say. And that's saying something. I think I could have gotten used to his writing style, but I also feel there's some translation barrier.
Yeah, that's just what we do in philosophy.
Yeah. Well, not all philosophers read like that. I've read a few, so I mean,
But some of them read really shitty.
some of them read really
Definitely
shitty.
apostrophe.
like fucking
Started on definitely apostrophe. Don't even get me started.
Yeah, that too. Also, Kant is just hard to read.
Yeah. Well, Kant was purposely hard to read. He specifically made his writing as indecipherable as possible.
He
so
named
that-
his shit obscurum, basically. His categorical imperative is just word vomit. I hate it.
I mean, he's a pragmatist. I'll give him that.
That's not
You know-
a good thing or bad. I don't know.
There's a scholar named Simon Parker, and he writes a lot about kind of poetic narratives and stuff and
Yeah.
how they're constructed. And reading through his shit makes me want to kill myself more than I already want to kill myself.
Hey,
It is
I like studying, iambic pentameter, shit like that.
Well, the thing is, what he is usually going over is like monocola and bicola and tricola, and how ancient poetry was written, and oh my God, it's just, it's very important to understanding the development of some of the stuff in the Bible, but it's so fucking boring. Like, I yawn every single page. I cannot get through a page without yawning.
Yeah.
Well, it's
I should put that book by my fucking bed
That's
when I can't fucking sleep.
It's
That's how you go
important
to
in
bed.
some contexts.
Yeah.
Like in the Norse religions, almost every time that Odin speaks in the Eddas is in a specific form of poetic meter associated with doing magic.
So I was going to ask Landon about that 3 logical things we have to posit.
Oh, okay. I mean, yeah, we can talk about whatever, man.
Yeah, welcome, Landon.
Hey, buddy.
Hello, Landon.
Maybe good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zone and latitude. I'm currently in
Hey,
Pacific
man.
time zone, but I'm up at the Keyboard Art School of Music.
Okay.
Music.
Cool.
So we were talking before about a couple things that were of rather interesting merit, and they might be useful for me in the future because some of them are major barriers to motivation for me.
Okay.
So like, we were talking about things being capable of being objective, if possible. I don't think that's possible. Me and Ruben both agree, and I think Lawrence knows too. You can't really have anything. No objective data actually exists.
I would say we can't have absolute certainty about anything.
I don't think we can have any certainty of anything.
I think we have some certainty, not absolute though.
My position is that if you hold an opinion, then objectively you hold that opinion. So it's an objective.
I don't.
That you hold the opinion.
Yeah, that you hold the opinion. The opinion itself is not an objective truth, but that you hold the
The
opinion.
medium that you exist on is subjective.
That is a huge posit that, I mean, you're arguing in favor of ontic vagueness, which fundamentally is not only the least adequate of all schools of vagueness, but is the least popular
Yeah, I know.
of all schools
My
of
favorite
vagueness.
school of vagueness, and you hate it. I like it because, from my own personal studies, the universe around me seems to have that level of vagueness.
I mean, you can conclude that your sensory organs have vague efficiency, but that doesn't mean that the things in themselves that are the subject of your perception are necessarily vague. It just means that the only way you have of representing them is vague.
Well,
you have
fair.
no way of knowing whether that's vague or not in reality.
Correct. And then I would have to assume that I have a way of doing that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to make that assumption. So that's where we're back to the three logical assumptions, that there are things that we can observe and study. We can learn about those things, and then we can recreate systems that then gain knowledge from that. I have extreme skepticism towards the first two claims because I don't know that things exist.
It's not a knowledge thing.
I mean, I can't.
That's why they're called presuppositions.
I can't assume that that things exist.
Well,
I can't assume that. There might be. It's very possible that there are. I could posit that there would be. I could also posit that there aren't.
Well,
so, what difference is it to me?
well, if you reject the first presupposition,
And I know the third one I've already recreated using subjective tenses.
right, but if you reject the first supposition, then the third supposition also is going to be subject to the first supposition, because if there is no thing,
Well, I replaced them with subjective. I said things might exist. We could learn about those things that might exist, and the things that we learn about those things that might exist may be able to help us create other things from those systems. That's what we can assume. I think that's how science is more accurately done, because we can't, in an observed state, we can't see the universe correctly.
All right.
So
let's try and find out a bit more about what it is you're interested in. I think one of the things that perhaps you need to consider is a difference between absolute certainty and uncertainty. You tend to run into problems when you try to make absolute statements.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you can't. It doesn't mean that there isn't a case of problem free, because that would be a self-contradictory statement. But I think you run into you're on safer ground when you don't make a seemingly dogmatic absolute statements. You're in safer ground that way. It also, but I think you need to distinguish between lack of absolute certainty and uncertainty. The inability to prove that something is, for example, doesn't mean that it falsifies its existence.
Well, I
The
can
ability
put
to
it-
prove something in science
Right.
does not stop a useless scientific endeavor. It merely tries to keep one more honest and say that you failed to falsify, right? You failed to prove the null hypothesis, for example. But some people who cling to absolute truth or absolutes want that sort of thing. Get quite upset when the universe doesn't yield their answers very well, and so they will sometimes resort to supernatural things if the natural world doesn't give them absolute certainty.
Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm subjective.
Oh, and I,
Very
yeah, and I,
certain that there are no gods in this space time.
I'm not saying you are. I'm talking about stuff in general.
Generic,
Right?
everybody, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's just a case of special bargaining where he's saying that if there is any legitimacy to the physical universe in any way, that there's this special set, which is conscious humans, and the rules don't apply to them.
No. They only have access to so much, and what they have access to might not be correct, and what they imply from that data might not actually have any significance on the actual data set itself.
But when I say the average human eye can see between 300 nanometers and 700 nanometers.
Sure.
Like,
We looked at light, we found wavelengths, we gave it numbers, we then made the correlation of the absorption spectrum on you can
and
take subjective data and learn more subjective data from it. Aren't you happy?
But that is objective data.
That's subjective. We gave it numbers. We don't know any of it.
Just because we made the terms does not mean we are not describing anything that's in reality.
No, it's not that we're not describing it. It's that we don't know if we are. It's a lack of knowledge, so you can't make an objective statement.
I mean, there's just nothing functionally that you can do.
Yes,
with
I know that.
ideology.
No, so what?
There's
That's
no
not the...
philosophical position you can posit.
That's
There's no
right.
scientific position you can
Exactly.
posit.
It's ultimate uncertainty.
But it's just a nonsense statement, and it turns itself into a nonsense statement.
That's fine, I think. And
I don't
I've said
think
that
that's fine.
before. And I've tried to make
It's
it...
called self-refuting.
Yeah,
I mean-
I think it's as self-refuting as any kind of like, oh, God did it argument.
Well, I mean, we can guess what subjectively is happening. We don't know what's happening, but we can guess, and we have sensory stuff that subjectively interact with subjective stuff, but the stuff that we're made of is subjective, so we don't even know what it is.
But you're still positing that the stuff we're made of is subjective when you don't know.
I'm still just listening because I came into this
Catching up.
conversation late, but is it possible that you are uncomfortable with the fact of lack of absolute certainty?
I don't think I'm uncomfortable with it. I've lived with that for a long time.
But by that if you go into complete nihilistic, well, you can't, nothing is certain, so screw it all. I mean, in a
Well, I have concluded nihilism through many avenues. It isn't just one. I've got philosophical approaches to how we can get there. I've got linguistic approaches. I've accidentally ended up at nihilism and proofs for it and arguments just by attempting to go into computer science, and that's dissuaded me further.
Unfortunately, every single one
I
of those
try to-
explanations is rife with contradictions and logical inconsistencies.
No, it's just one logical inconsistency that always ends up at the bottom of the well.
Oh, but
It's
remember,
always one, and you hate it.
in his worldview, it would.
No, it destroys logical
There-
consistency, so it can't be logically consistent.
Yeah,
You
no
dislike
such
it.
thing as logic. in his worldview.
Yeah,
it
there's
sounds
also
like
anything.
it destroys conversation. Right?
I mean,
Yeah,
that too.
What I'm hearing.
Yeah.
This may not be what you're saying, but what I'm hearing is a frustration and a whole bunch of verbiage that comes out of, initial statement to explore.
Sure.
And what comes from you is a long item that sounds like it's laden with emotion rather than.
Well, I'm frustrated with Lawrence and Ruben because this is the 7th year I've argued this shit with them at least. It's.
Okay,
I mean,
so-
I wouldn't have a problem telling, and also I'm sick of explaining this position for the most part because I always have to end up doing that. Somebody's like,
Well-
how do you actually believe this crap? And I'm like, well, let's start at the beginning. I'll happily logically explain it to you. And yeah, I'm a little attached to it at this point, but I'd like to become more detached from it.
Well, it's
Considering-
because you focused your entire efforts around layman's logic instead of actually trying to deduce anything with actual formal logic.
I think formal logic is a very flawed field.
That's just because you failed.
No, I studied it and I failed because my dad had two heart attacks. I think that's fair.
That might be fair, but you still haven't demonstrated that you have understanding of the concepts that were used in it.
No, and I agree. I don't fully understand all the concepts that were demonstrated to me in that class, but I have a decent enough understanding to know that it has its limitations.
It's about logic. You have to.
I was frustrated by the fact that it had such a large amount of limitations that I didn't even really care to study it as much.
Yeah, because logic requires you to not just posit random things.
I mean,
That's a limitation.
I could say anything's random, but that's whatever. I think they're all correlated. What I like to posit.
I mean,
Rachel, we're the ones having this discussion, and we're not even sure what's going on.
No, that's fine. That's I mean, I
Well,
don't
see,
mind.
I'm yet trying to see if I can actually enter into the conversation. It sounds like, the three of you have had this thing
Oh, sure.
over again, and when I try to approach something, it sounds like. So if you want someone to be involved,
Well, I'm listening. I'm done.
one of the
talking.
things I think you need to consider about that. Now, if you take Pitmonk, for example, on the one hand, he doesn't give a damn. On the other hand, he does give a damn, right? And
Sure.
and he just gets to decide when he does and when he doesn't, right?
I mean, I think in some ways, yeah.
What you talking about?
Hello there, sir.
Y'all pull me into
look
this
who it
shit. I said I was gonna take a break from all you sons of bitches today.
too bad you're hooked.
So Pitmonk,
Yeah, you'll never escape.
While I have you in the line, and before we dive into the dumpster fire of logic here, when should we start the Mom Pimp interview?
That's the thing, man. She is not feeling well at all.
Okay, so let's cancel it for.
Well, I
tomorrow.
was wondering. I was gonna ask you if that was okay.
Yeah,
She said because
that is
I talked to
fine.
her and she told me she would do it.
But
she
remember,
just don't
remember,
feel-
part of this interview is for the benefit of other people. If she's not 100%,
Yes. Sir.
then we, or 99% or whatever. the-
Yeah, she's not even. I wouldn't. Yeah, she's pretty sick.
So why don't we delay that?
I was
I'd be
thinking.
happy to do so because I think it'll be more beneficial for people
Yeah.
if she's on her game.
I was thinking I'd come up with a different day and then actually promote it a little bit more too. And then,
Well, I think again it's a matter of the difference between promoting certainly the recording of it, and then promoting for those people who who are supportive enough to hear it live as opposed
Yes,
to
sir.
waiting for it to be processed.
yes, sir, absolutely. If y'all gonna talk logic though, I'm getting the fuck out of here.
I'm
No, I'm joking.
trying to destroy logic, and he's
It is Pitmonk is on it. If you're not, that's what I understood. That we're talking about nihilism, certainty, uncertainty, science, and what we know from it. That's I'm guessing as the general topic
Yeah.
area.
Well, here's
And
what I
that's-
know about science. I'm not good at it.
I know that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
Yeah.
I think you would be good at stand-up scientific comedy.
Yeah. No, not Lawrence. I think he meant me, but he might have meant Lawrence.
No, I definitely meant Penmon.
Yeah.
If it's a stand-up improvisational scientific comedy, because see, in the comedy you don't have to be correct, you just have to
Yeah.
touch the person. You have to read your audience, and you have to think quick on your feet.
Yeah, so you gotta have that certain you gotta know how to fake it.
And there's nothing certain in comedy.
Or science. No, I'm joking, of course.
But that's one of those things that you're looking for certainty.
That's the great thing about science. That's always about the question.
Yeah.
And you know, and that's the difference between us and people who don't think logically, who think they have the answers. And I mainly mean religious folks here, is that they think they have the answers. We are looking for the answers.
I am not religious. Stop pointing
You're
at
in
me.
the religion of nihilism.
Nihilism is just a philosophical point. I don't want to have
Well,
it.
here's the difference. But now I got my own outlook about philosophical people. And Landon knows my outlook on this. I think philosophers are motherfuckers who want to tell other motherfuckers who actually live life how to live life.
Yeah, you.
Yeah, Ruben.
Yeah, you. Now we get to point at you. Ooh.
No, we're still pointing at
I
you.
don't.
Whatever. I'm not a philosopher.
I think Matt Monk, you're mostly right. I think there's a lot of people who are so-called philosophers whose objective is to tell people how to be, live, and think.
Well,
Not all.
Yeah, what I mean mainly though is that philosophers want to talk about the experience of life instead of experiencing life. In a lot of cases.
I think probably fair.
I mean, yeah, Ruben likes to talk about stuff more than he likes to do stuff, but
That's true.
That's me too.
Now, it doesn't say that there's no value in doing both.
No. There's value in doing both. But I just think it's kind of, philosophers get on my fucking nerves sometimes. And I love philosophy, don't get me wrong. I think comedy is one of the biggest philosophical, lives there is. However, but I think in order to do comedy, you actually have to experience things. You can't just sit up here and talk about it because comedy comes from tragedy. We all know that. But it also comes from happiness. It comes from actually touch, feel, smell.
And this, by the way, is a pretty philosophical discussion about comedy, but I'll point out from a comedian. Just a little irony there, Mr.
Yeah. Well,
Comedy.
you give me. A lot of people can talk about so many other things. Now, if you want to talk about comedy, I am one guy who can sit down and break down comedy beyond just making you laugh.
Well, it's an art.
It's also not just about making you laugh.
Yeah.
One of the great comedians, Patrice O'Neill, said one time that in order to be a great comedian, you want to piss 50% of your audience off and make 50. If they're all laughing at you, you're doing it wrong.
Oh, Rachel says just because you're a nihilist doesn't mean you can't be optimistic. I agree.
And this is live. I did not know this was fucking live.
Oh yeah,
we're
definitely
live. Lucky you're not naked right now.
Yeah.
I'm glad I got my camera off because I actually am naked.
He called it.
And I'm not even lying. Look at you.
No, we buy it.
Hey,
He flashed us.
What happened to after his nude videos?
No.
Bananagate. Woo.
And there's a female in the chat room. Hey, baby, how you doing?
Well, she's our consistent.
She is a regular.
She's our regular. Thanks.
Do me a favor, Lawrence. Tell her I ate her pussy till she get a concussion.
What? Something about pussies and concussion.
No, eat her pussy until she gets a concussion.
Ah, well, it's very nice of you.
Challenge accepted.
How kind.
Well, that sounds difficult.
No, I know the little dude that said how kind he doesn't know what eating pussy is. I'll explain it to you later.
Well, I've willingly been celibate for many years because I don't want to hang out with people.
I'm celibate too. If I can't give it away, I'll celibate.
Ah. Very good. No, I just can't see myself dating anybody, but that's a different thing.
I can't see you dating anybody either.
I mean, I went out of my way to look the way I do. I don't look like this so I can get...
No, dude, you're not that ugly.
No, I do try to look just a little homely though, so people don't talk to me when I go shopping and
We
stuff.
all can't look like Lawrence, man. I mean, shit.
I mean, like, if you really like all the random stuff everybody's got to talk to you about, it's mostly small talk, and if it's not, it's mostly drama. So I'm out.
Oh, see, there's the problem. You want to talk to them.
Yeah, I do, but I like having conversation with people, but I don't like having like, I don't know, vapid conversation.
Yeah,
I'll tell you who figured out love.
Going on in their life or their opinions.
But a lot
about things.
Are they my friends? No, I don't.
You don't want to have, you know. Well, Cosby really figured out the romance of it.
So, but a lot of conversation doesn't have to be always deep and heavy
No.
and so forth, right?
Well, I
Our
only get
conversation
one
can also be.
existence. One that I enjoy, and I enjoy that more than most.
But
I'm
you're not
sure.
absolutely certain of that.
I'm subjectively certain of it.
But are you willing to give a little, like, you know, have a goofy conversation with the chick, and
Oh,
then maybe get deep?
I mean, I like goofy conversations too. I mean, it's just I don't like.
But are you willing to talk about girly shit with her? Or listen to her talk about her problems and shit.
Well,
Do that.
more importantly, are you willing to listen to somebody talk about their problems and not propose to fix them?
Oh yes, that is
Oh, that sucks. I don't want to do that.
that is awesomely said, because that's a problem we all have. I think, especially guys, we want to fix it for the female.
No, I just want to help people, and when people bitch to me, I want them to stop bitching to me about it and get help.
Maybe they just want you to listen.
That's
I
the
don't
thing.
want to
Yes.
listen.
Well, then that means you're not probably
good
for
boy.
those people
I'm
not
not looking for a
someone fun to be
relationship.
around.
I know that it's a good thing that I'm not. I'd be a bad boyfriend. I know. I'm an okay friend. I like to listen to my friends' problems because then I can help them.
Yeah.
But if it's a
But see-
girl, and they won't let me help them,
But-
kind of screwed.
Oh yeah, he doesn't have any female friends.
I can listen to someone's problems. So you are presupposing they want your help,
Mm.
or their
Why are they telling
problem
me?
can be helped, right?
Oh, I can tell you why they're
sometimes,
telling-
sometimes someone wants someone just to listen.
I
Exactly.
understand bitching. I mean, I bitch and other people bitch, and they bitch to me about stuff they can't fix. And that's different than complaining about stuff they can fix. In the grand majority of instances I've had with girlfriends and stuff, they just complain about stuff that's like, hey, look, I'll do this 2 things, and now your problem's solved forever.
Well, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a serious question, right? You're a computer guy, right?
On and off, I do everything pretty much. But
I mean, you're pretty good at computers.
I don't want to brag, but sure, I'm okay.
Yeah, okay. But have you ever know what the problem is in the computer and still bitch to your friend about it?
It depends.
You have.
If I don't know what the problem is, I'm more likely to bitch.
But I mean,
Chris,
what I'm saying is, you said if it's easily fixed, why are they bitching to you about it? It's
Right.
because
If you have a
sometimes we-
problem, why are you bringing me this problem
Because
that
sometimes
you
we
can't fix if you're not
just,
just complaining, you know?
but sometimes we just want to talk and we want somebody to listen.
I mean,
See-
I hear you.
So here's the thing that sometimes happens when someone has a problem is they're trying to figure it out themselves.
Yeah.
And by explaining it to somebody else, they get a better handle on it. I mean, one of the best ways to learn is to teach. So when someone is telling you about a problem, what they're really doing is they're teaching you what they're going through.
Yeah.
And by listening and them trying to explain it to somebody else, you give them an opportunity to figure out more about themselves.
I see. Okay,
Right?
so
You don't have to fix it. They don't have to fix it, but you give them an opportunity to learn.
well, that doesn't mean that it generally lowers my quality of life experience to an intolerable point.
You're just a goddamn grump.
Yeah,
and,
I'm a
you know,
grump.
and there's nothing wrong with saying something like that sounds like it's terrible. That sounds like it really bothers you. That sounds like blah, 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 right? Sometimes that's what's necessary.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't know how we got into this conversation, but
Because Pimp Monk observed that you might be one of those people that tells people what to do when they're complaining about what they're going to do. And he,
I don't
because one
necessarily
thing,
know
one
what
thing about good improv people is they can size people up really fast.
It's very
I
true, yeah.
I don't know what to do all the time. A lot of the times I'll just be like, dude, I have no idea what you should do. I mean, I'm only so knowledgeable about certain things, and I get really bored when I start delving deeper than surface level knowledge on most fields. So, you know,
It's not a great thing.
that's not a great thing. It's a horrible thing. I know. That's my biggest flaw, I think, Landon, really.
See, the difference
Well,
is
we were
that-
talking about education before and why I haven't gone back into it. It's because the more I get into a field, the less interested I am in it.
Wow.
It's just every field. I don't know why it is.
See, the issue with your approach is that if you had a girlfriend, she would be there and she would be your girlfriend because she specifically approves of the way that you handle her emotion.
Yeah.
If you don't care at all
Don't.
about, satisfying the emotional needs of another person,
But I
you
don't have
care at all
those.
about having any significant.
Well, to me, it sounds like not just women, but like he talking about his fields and everything. He has a problem with committing to anything. But it's not, like, just commitment, going the long haul. He doesn't want to do, and I know a lot of people are that way.
Well, when I make a promise, I do what I say I'm going to do.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm saying like you said, it's hard. Like once you go deeper into something, you get tired of it real quick.
Oh,
So, yeah.
I mean, commitment is one thing. Absolutely. I always consider the opportunity cost that if I decide to become an expert on this particular thing, that I won't have time to do X, Y, Z, and a million other indefinite amount of new ideas that'll come to me later.
Well, I know that's not true. Because look at Landon. That motherfucker's done everything and mastered everything.
That's true. And you know what? Maybe there's the truth in his approach right there. Is that if I actually wanted to do a bunch of stuff that required that level of commitment, I see that it's possible, and it's admirable from a societal perspective, at least, that he can do that. It's pretty cool. It's just that I don't esteem to that for myself.
I can jerk off and eat a sandwich at the same time.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, that's pretty fun.
I wouldn't suggest it.
Don't do it on the air.
Don't mix up mayo. Don't mix up your mayo.
That was disgusting.
Hey, I'm trying to be funny.
Yeah.
No, it was funny. It was funny.
All right.
But Chris is also a defeatist, strictly. He
Wow.
thinks that anything that he doesn't do perfectly the first time is not worth his time to
I don't
try
know what
again.
perfect is. What's perfect?
Well,
I'm not
any
gonna.
time that I've seen
hold
you have
myself to a
difficulty
standard.
with anything, you instantly drop it.
Yeah, I don't really have a lot of fun with difficulties. I mean, when something gets challenging, that doesn't mean it's more interesting. That just means I have to work on it longer, and that's more time commitment. It doesn't mean it's harder. It just means it's longer. And I get frustrated with that, knowing that once I've learned X to learn Z in that field, to get into more depth, the amount of time I'd have to put in just to get a full understanding. I mean, that's exactly why I don't have a full understanding of a lot of stuff. And I'm sure I could spend the rest of my life filling that in, but then I'd miss out on all the new stuff that I wanted to learn that just came out, because there's always going to be new fields, and that's kind of why I'm around. I like to just find out new stuff.
Imagine if every scientist took your point of view.
Well, I'm not a scientist, though. That's
But you
exactly why I'm
claimed
not.
for years to be an information scientist.
That's a field. That's the field of study.
Yeah, so is astronomy.
Yeah.
So is physics.
So it's, yeah, exactly.
What exactly are you trying to say about Landon?
He's a real scientist.
Yes, he is.
But he's not an information scientist.
I don't think he went into that field. No.
But Landon knows information about science,
Yes, he does.
which makes him a scientist.
With information.
With information.
I mean, I've done some stuff in that, but I wouldn't call myself, because again, if I think in order to say I am a blah, you need to have studied in that field. You need to be tracking what's currently going on in that field,
Right.
as best as you can.
And I'd say that would be true for information science even today for me, because I mean, I still have to do stuff for web dev. I still have to do design aspects. I still have to do all sorts of stuff that I learned in the brief time I had the college education I was going for. Plus, I got a bunch of certifications, so that has helped.
But back, if I heard you say something like, but then it got derailed, that you don't want to go into something because there's always new things coming up.
Yeah, and I really, the more I look into something, I regret that I did that. Like I go, man, I was studying chemistry for so long, but then I missed out on all this new science that was coming out then, and only today and in the past few years, I'd say.
Is it that? So again, our art of our conversation is sort of back and forth. Is it that your frustrated
What?
that
Boy, that was a
Yeah,
lot.
Landon,
Landon, you're lagging. I need you to repeat.
Yeah, I could not understand that.
is it possible that you're frustrated because you can't learn everything?
Well, that is frustrating, but I think I have enough time to learn everything eventually.
No, you don't.
If I live forever.
Why do you think it's what's frustrating about it? Help me understand.
I mean, I don't know if it's frustrating. I think it's boring.
You just said it was frustrating.
Well, the boredom is frustrating. That's what's frustrating. The fact that I go, oh man, I read this and that. After a certain point, everything gets so repetitious, I can't handle it anymore. I mean, even when establishing extremely sophisticated concepts, most of the time, and in any science or philosophy, they have to go back and rebuild on everything again. And rarely is it just a new intellectual pursuit. And honestly, I like starting from scratch whenever I try something. So
You know why that's an issue in philosophy? It's because people misinterpret things that other people write.
yeah, that's true. I understand that.
So that when you read a news study and they're like, oh, Nietzsche thought this, you don't know that. You need to read the Nietzsche in order to figure out what Nietzsche
Sure.
thought.
And I rarely read what other people think about what other people wrote. I don't want a synopsis. I'd like to make my own opinions. That's true too. So I don't know. I think that's just a little bit of scrutiny is involved. Man, there's some good comments. Let's see what we got.
You can't learn everything. You can try and be able to learn some things, but that's as close as you can go, which is true because
Yeah.
literally more information is produced in 1
Right.
second
Well,
than you are capable of
right. But
taking in.
if I'd like to have I'm going to always just have an approximation of how much there is. That's all I'm ever going to have, and I'm pretty satisfied with that for the most part. I don't think I have to learn everything. But at the same time, I'd like to know as much as I can in as many diversified things as I could. So you can't do that in any particular field or job or specialization.
Yeah, you're never going to learn anything in a certain field. You can just learn as much as you can.
Right.
And that's
Right. And I mean, I'll learn as much as I can stay interested in. I think I lose interest very quickly, and I think that is the problem.
Because here's the thing. So when it comes to like all the Bible stuff that I do,
You don't lose interest at all. It's incredible.
Oh, no. Lawrence has lost interest many times. He just does it anyway.
You powered
because
through
that's
it,
what he
man.
does.
Yeah.
because the thing is, I want answers to the questions I have.
Yeah.
And in order for me to get those answers, I have to read. Sometimes I have to read through a lot of boring shit.
Mhm.
Sometimes you have to read like 10 or 12, 300, 400, 500 page
Right,
books in order to get the answer from one
I
question.
don't know what will give me the answers to my questions, so I'll just study everything.
Well, yeah. It really depends on the specific question you're looking to answer.
Yeah, well, most of them are the great philosophical questions of our time.
Maybe you should have more philosophy books than the grand total of however many I brought over.
You still keep bringing them over.
Yeah, that might be useful.
Yeah, well, either way, I hope that explains my position for you a little better. Oh, we lost Pimp Monk. Oh,
Can we
well.
talk about something other than nothing?
Yeah, sure. We could bring up any field. I'll posit any field. It's fine. We just started on this because I said I'd start the conversation with some nihilist bullshit, and hey, here it was.
Yeah, you felt really good about that. Right?
I feel pretty good that I got that out of my system. It's nice to talk about it. Thanks for teaching me that, Landon.
Yes, I'm glad that I could listen, and I'm not sure.
No.
But, I'm not sure where it's going to go, but perhaps we can talk about that particular topic a little bit more later.
Sure.
So, Landon,
Yes.
you're obviously doing scientists, being around scientists, and I know in psychology there are pretty stringent ethical requirements of studies that they want to do. Do you run into ethics requirements in astronomy?
I think so. Let's set aside simply, ethics about integrity, right? Like not publishing false information or that sort of thing.
Okay.
Because that tends to be probably somewhat universal about things. And there's, you know, don't steal other people's works and that kind of stuff. There's also sometimes conventions where the question is who has the right to publish data. An example of a challenge is data that's received from the Hubble telescope. The convention is, unless stated otherwise, that the people who have been assigned the time of the Hubble telescope get sort of first right to publish information for a period of 1 year, even though other people can see what they're seeing because it's, you know, going through the, you know, you can see what the Hubble telescope is looking at.
Here's a good question on that.
Kind of the convention there is don't steal someone's data, give them a year, or ask permission.
Sure.
So when you're publishing, I know this is a problem in some psychology departments where you'll have like research assistants who do a whole bunch of the work involved and then don't get any credit within the publications.
Yeah.
Does that happen a lot in your field?
Yeah, it has been somewhat with you know, in terms of how do you decide who gets to get credit. It particularly becomes problematic when something gets to be well known, or something gets to be famous, right? That there are people who say, "Hey, I participated, and why don't I get credit?"
Yeah.
That's a problem that, you know, the colleagues that you know, went to, as I say, got called to Stockholm to receive a prize, and there was a bunch of people who said, "But I deserve the prize because I did more of that field than you did," and da 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 type of thing. So that's kind of the jealousy bit.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So I think there's integrity in terms of publishing things that you know, not publishing things that are knowingly false, not stealing other people's work, asking, you know, permission, acknowledging those kind of things. But that's pretty standard in any sort of observational type science, I think. I see beyond that, there are sometimes areas where we've learned where national security comes into play. One of them, I mean, for example, one of the more famous ones was the Compton Gamma Ray Telescope, which was an astronomical telescope to be able to look at the observers in very, very short wavelengths. And there were known sources that the Gamma Ray Telescope could pick up that were nearby because they were in spacecraft, and people developed a catalog of, you know, when you see weird stuff coming from that direction, that's just something in that direction that is that's, you know, like a satellite with a nuclear power reactor in it, or something like that. So they began to basically publish sources saying ignore this, this, and this, and this. Unfortunately, one of the things that they got, there were these anomalistic sources which they ended up discovering that they were looking at the Earth. So, for example, you look at Earth, you can see Chernobyl and its strewn field, right? And so when you're scanning the sky and the telescope happens to point towards Earth where we're in that area in Ukraine, you know not to, you know, ignore that signal because it's not something of cosmic origin.
Right.
So it began to pick up these things, and so it was a little bit harder because the Earth's obviously spinning. You have to sort of take time to account. But there were several sources that it identified in the Black Sea that they said these are obviously terrestrial, and you ignore these things too. It turned out that these had some coast of what was then Soviet Union that the Soviet Union didn't know about. And people published it as, ignore these sources because they're not of cosmic origin. Not and that telescope was good enough that it could actually detect what the Navy thought was ability to hide vehicles turned out not to be good enough for a large telescope. And then a bunch of spy satellites which had, radiation generators that were identified. And so at some point there was a whole discussion about, well, all right, if you begin to detect these things, at what point do you decide, do you go through sensors to say what they can or can't tell? Because then you have a case where your colleagues that are not U.S. citizens, you might have a joint international program, do you tell them or not tell them ahead of time? And it got to be quite messy. So there's ethics about that kind of a thing. Some protocols have been developed. For example, the ethics around detecting potentially hazardous asteroids. The decisions that were made there was to have the people involved be from a number of different nations, so that no one could say, "Oh, you can't talk about this," right? So when the big one comes our way,
they're going to get a giant meteor.
There won't be a country that says you can't talk about that right now, right? It'll be
right.
So there's what happens, but the decisions that are mostly made are it's better to provide the information than to ask permission from a certain government to provide, if you can provide that information.
Is that why Elon Musk and SpaceX are facing troubles surrounding their ability to broadcast data back to Earth, their space missions? I heard that they had some things in the way where the U.S. government was saying that they needed some kind of licensing or something.
Well, actually, the board, it's not permission thing. It's you're dealing with communication transmitters, right? The frequency is a shared space, and you just don't simply want to put up a transmitter and start blasting away because other people use those frequencies.
Well, I don't know if Musk owns any of those bands. You'd have to own.
But certain bands that are allowed to use a certain power transmitter, transmission powers and so forth. There's nothing sort of sinister about it. It's a matter of if you're going to use a frequency band, you need to comply within the international agreements. Also, in deep space missions, there are bands that are reserved for that, and the Deep Space Network decides essentially who gets to do what. So you don't want a space probe flying past like the New Horizons space probe at the end of the year flying past Ultima, all of a sudden getting a signal swamp because someone wants to go and play CB radio on a microsatellite.
Yeah.
Right. So there are things where what but there's no different than you deciding, hey, I'm going to put up a transmitter and broadcast it at 88.5 megahertz.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have there are rules on how much and kind of a certain frequency. So that's the thing that's there. So the data I know in terms of asteroid stuff is published. The ethics around that is to publish it first in a way that talks about the uncertainty of the data. So that's been one thing that was happening was that whenever an orbit was seen to be Earth crossing, it was put up as potentially hazardous, and that caused people to not understand what that means. Potentially hazardous means you need more information before you can determine the degree of hazard.
Right.
Yeah.
So instead of embargoing that, the idea is now that there are newly discovered objects, and then there's enough information enough certainty about the orbit to determine the risk. is how it's done now, right? Rather than to prohibit publishing of stuff.
So
That's better.
let's say there's a planet and its orbit coincides with Earth's orbit. And this planet's going to crash into us and we're all going to die.
Hooray! It's Nibiru.
Does it really do any good to publish anything about it? We don't have, the resources to get
We're gonna
everyone
notice.
off the planet in time.
You're gonna notice the massive planet.
Well, I mean, I think the answer is yes. I think it because one of the things that in looking for potentially hazardous objects, you want to gain as much advance notice as possible so you have more options available to potentially
We
do
probably
something
know
about them.
Sized object moving through our solar system. Probably.
So detection is certainly one of the things, and also it happens that when you detect something, publishing that to allow other people to confirm and to refine what you've detected is important. So advance notice is better than not knowing and being surprised.
How often do planets collide into each other, though?
We are not off nowadays.
Well, you talk about planets. Planets are pretty. That's a pretty rare thing if you're talking about something the size of a planet. But it is. I mean, it is a. So, but again, you keep using the word planet. I think, if you said, well, how often does stuff run into stuff, right? There's that.
How about fast stuff?
Well, I mean, obviously there's small bits of debris and such that's going to run into other things. But I mean, I think I'm saying planets specifically because it is obviously a scenario in which an actual effect happens.
Yeah, because micrometeoroids, and these are objects that are, less than a gram, and annually there is something on the order of about 25 trillion of these objects that hit the Earth, and that's something around close to 13 million tons a year rain down on our planet that are a gram or less. But if you talk about things that are in the meteoroid thing, so we're talking about objects that are on, let's say, on the order of, the mass is over 10 grams, but 10 grams, third of an ounce for those that are metrically challenged. There are somewhere in the neighborhood of around 50,000 of those with mass over 10 grams that hit the Earth each year, and that adds about, so somewhere around 2 tons, 3 tons a year that hit. But most of the range is between a marble and a basketball. Only about one large meteoroid that's in the 5 to 10 meter range reaches the Earth each year, and most of those hit somewhere over the ocean.
How many of the rocky metal ones usually make it in of that size?
If you're talking again about things that are on the order of 5 to 10 meters, that's about 16 to 30 feet across. About one a year reaches Earth. And asteroids that are things that are 100 meters, 300 feet, strike the Earth about once every several thousand years. Right? Things that are around the kilometer strike at a range of about every million years or so. And it gets smaller and smaller. That's the frequency as you get bigger and bigger. And so the idea is to try and look for these things that are potentially hazardous. I mean, and you saw, and we saw several years ago when an object that was, I think, around, the assessments now are around 13 meters across, detonated over Chelyabinsk, right? It vaporized in the Earth's atmosphere over this Russian city, and while no one was killed, it did a lot of damage.
Yeah, sonic bombs.
And such. So those are things where, there's a smaller end of the scale of asteroids, but we'd like to be able to detect those. But particularly the ones that are, when you start getting into the 100-meter range, that's when it can start to create a reasonable amount of devastation. And those appear to have a rate about every 5 to 10,000 years.
Now, it seems to me that over time, if we're getting trillions of fractions of grams of matter that are coming into our planet, it seems to me that the planet itself would grow in mass over time, possibly exponentially once it becomes a larger target.
Well, we also get, by the time that would be important, I think the sun would have gone red giant. And second,
Would have eaten us up.
would have eaten us up. And second of all, I think, Landon and I, I'm sure you agree with this, but our planet loses mass too.
Yeah,
Every
because
time.
consider the mass of the Earth. I mean, the mass of the Earth is somewhere around 6 times 10 to the 24th kilograms. And if it's at 6 times 10 to the 24th kilograms, so 6 times 24th and 1,000 kilograms to a metric ton, that's 6 times 10 to the 21st metric tons.
Yeah.
Right? So if it's gaining, so that's 6 with 21 zeros tons, and it's only gaining around 13 million tons a year. That's
It won't be. It's negligible almost. Yeah.
But most of the mass that Earth picks up is what we call it, space dandruff, right? It's the cosmic dust that rains down. And if you go up into your gutters and vacuum out the stuff that your gutters collect, some fraction of the schmutz that you have to dust around comes from atmospheric micrometeoroids.
Yeah.
Some of it is pollution.
That's why
some of it
there's
is dirt.
Yeah. Like you can even have the most isolated area that's out of the range of the wind and stuff outside or something, and it still gets dusty. That explains it. Eventually.
Yeah, and even in Antarctica, right, with pure outer ice is contaminated by space dandruff, micrometeoroids, and those are things that they just drift down because they reach terminal velocity and just basically drift down as dust.
Oh, speaking of Antarctica, unfortunately, I heard that its record of having no murders has ended.
Someone get murdered in Antarctica?
I hear 2 guys did, yeah.
Yeah, I heard. I saw a news article saying that 2 people were found dead, possibly murdered. Have you seen that?
I have not.
Oh, maybe we could send him something on that.
Now, what's the percentage then of murder rates now? If those end up
Now,
being-
there's an attempted murder charge. There was a guy that stabbed somebody because he got
Yeah,
upset.
but I think this article was specifically talking about a couple of people who were actually murdered. Let me see if I can
Find it.
find it with a quick Google search.
You didn't like repost it or anything?
I didn't repost it. I was like, this might be fake. I'm gonna ask Landon.
Yeah, you're a good red flag for whether or not this is fake news. Because if you haven't heard about it, it must not be that important.
I mean, I don't know of anything that goes on in that continent, so.
Well, you're our main source, so you're 100% more informed than we are.
About everything that goes on
In
there.
Antarctica, yep.
Yeah, now I'm looking it up and it's just giving, well, there's a Wikipedia article on crime in Antarctica.
Ooh.
And there's a list of crimes in Antarctica. Wow, this is sparse.
Well,
Could you imagine a list of crimes in the U.S.?
No,
Every single case?
no.
That'd be ridiculous.
Oh, I couldn't imagine it. It's too long.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything about this thing that I saw, so it must be fake news.
That's good. No murders.
No murders, as far as we know. We don't know who might be out there in the ice.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we could wrap it up.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, we're probably gonna wrap this this thing up.
Yep.
Yeah, we're gonna have a square dancing competition after we're done with the show.
But you don't get to see it?
Also, to anyone that's listening to this, we got a big surprise
Yes, we
for
do.
NTS Sunday.
Next
School.
Sunday.
Ooh.
That's
Next
right.
Sunday, you're about
Tomorrow.
to see something incredible.
We've got a new media production that you'll enjoy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
gonna love it.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
New
for
media
joining us.
production. Stay
Yeah.
tuned for Atheist Sunday School tomorrow.
Yep.
Yeah, Lawrence, when are you gonna put it up for the patrons?
I could probably do that now. Actually.
Yeah. We'll put
Yeah,
up.
Landon, you'll see it.
You'll see it. We'll have it for patrons first.
Yeah, we'll do that in like within an hour.
Right.
Probably.
And again, I would invite to have this extended discussion or continued discussion about certainty and so forth, and
Sure.
maybe approaches without all of the burdens of past discussion.
Well, maybe you and I could just
A
talk.
little bit more. We don't have to solve it. We just talk a little bit more about it to so I can better understand your position and give you my thoughts, not to fix or change your opinion, but just give you
Sure.
my thoughts as I better understand your position.
Well, as far as I could tell, you seem rather impartial on all your positions, and I don't really have to put any salt on your stuff.
By the way, speaking of Antarctica, there's a certain base I won't name it, but they didn't like the base commander who was putting saltpeter in the food because the base commander didn't want individuals enjoying themselves.
Oh, what?
And so the debate was whether or not, it would be, to basically cook bad food for this person. I said bad tasting food in response to this. Drama, right? It was drama that occurs. And so sometimes, and sometimes when visitors show up, the drama kind of spills out. I have not on this thing, but I have been at the South Pole gift shop when someone comes in and says, "I hear there's somebody from my company here." Yes. Well, here's my resume. I want to apply for a job there because I don't want to work here anymore. It's like, okay. So drama occurs whenever there's people involved.
Fair enough. It's hard
Fuck
to.
all y'all.
Oh, and hey, Pimp, we're just about to wrap
We're
up
just
here.
about wrapping up here.
Good, that's why I
you
came
could give
in.
us your view on life in general.
Life in general. I think a lot of times that we take it too fucking serious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think also we try to become too certain
Important.
about things rather than just enjoying the moment.
And we want to be more important than we really should be.
And why do I like sometimes hanging out and watching the Morning Wood Show? Because not all life has to be absolute serious.
Absolutely. Yeah,
A little bit
absolutely.
of goofiness can.
Well, that's how the morning wood got started, is because the blood sport thing that was happening. Everybody was at each other's throat and people was throwing each other under the bus, and I was like, fuck, let's just have a moment where we can just be goofy and laugh at each other and not really get mad.
Yeah.
Hey,
And
man, I'd watch the show that you were just describing.
Yeah.
Well,
And-
it's on 4 days a week.
Yeah, morning one.
yeah, we'd be on there too.
I've been on
You've
there.
been
We're
on
talking
there, yeah.
about people.
Lawrence is on there a lot, man.
Sports, come on.
Yeah. Well, I would love to actually have all three of you guys on at once.
That would be a fun thing.
Up in the morning.
Oh, in the morning. I
It's
got
called the Morning
It's called the
Wood.
Morning Wood. That's right. I'll try.
It's the show. It's the show named after an erection.
Now, by morning, you mean like.
The morning.
Yeah.
It's only 10 o'clock our time. You're on the same time as me.
10 Central, 8 Pacific.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, one of my quotes is that life is far too important to take seriously.
Yeah, that's good.
I like that.
I can dig it.
All right. Well, anyways, We're definitely gonna wrap up the stream. Thank you, all the viewers.
And
Thanks,
Of course.
Animist. I know you
There's,
left us earlier, but
There's the classic. Anyone who's a fan of New York hip hop would know that according to Nas, life's a bitch and then you die. That's why we get high, because you never know when you're gonna go.
thanks, guys. All right, thanks for joining us, and whoever sees this, I hope you enjoy our nihilist grants and our good
Oh.
planets. Bye, everybody.